Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, as always, we've got a real treat. Mr. Mando Sallavanti is in the house. Mando is, I didn't prep myself on that. Sorry. Certified financial planner. Should I just call you that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me start over.
No biggie.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, as always, we've got a real treat for you. Mr. Mando Sallavanti is in the house. Mando is certified financial planner at Mass Mutual, hails from Greater Philadelphia. Mando, welcome to the show.
Chris, Dustin, appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Excited to have you and talk about all the things in the financial world. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about how you got into this business.
Yeah, so I never thought I was going to be a financial advisor. And I'll give you the backstory. I remember when I was a kid, and what I always think of, we'd go to restaurants as a family, right? And, it's me and my mom, my dad, my sister. We're leaving restaurants. And when you're a kid, going out to eat is like the most pain enhancing thing in the world. You don't want to do it. You want to leave. You want to go home, play your video games, whatever. So I'd be tugging on my dad's leg. I'm like, let's go. And what I realized as I grew older, all these people that would stop him as we left restaurants, they did it because they respected him. They did it because of the impact he had on them. Now, what does my dad do? My dad's a family doctor, and because of those characteristics and things, I wanted to be him. I wanted to follow in those footsteps. I wanted that impact. I wanted those relationships with people. And quite frankly, every time it was time for Little League, I had a bat. And every year when Christmas came around, we celebrate Christmas, there was presents under the tree. So like life was good. I figured, hey, my dad must make some okay money. So now I'm in high school. I go to college. I'm playing football, and it was ingrained in me that was what I was going to do. Play football, come out. I'm not going to the NFL. I was a 5'11", 215-pound linebacker. Those don't exist. So I go pre-med. And as I'm pre-med and I'm going through football, I realize, this isn't my passion. I don't think I want to be a doctor. I was really struggling in classes. I wasn't engaged at all. And I was an A student prior to then. So something was off. And that was what I keyed in on. From that point, my dad started putting me in touch with different people and different careers. And he said, look, I'm contributing. I'm paying for your school. You are going to figure out what you want to do because, quite frankly, you're not going to school on my dime with no idea what's going on. It's a waste of money. Second person I talked to is his financial advisor at the time, Timmy Lavelle. And when I talked to Timmy, he broke down what it meant to be an advisor, and I could boil what he said to me down to these three things. He said, kid, look, there's three things we all think about before we go to bed at night. Number one, did I hurt anyone today? Number two, am I healthy? And he said, if you're not healthy, you call your doctor, you get a prescription. That's your dad. And he said, number three, can I pay my bills tomorrow? Am I making the right financial decisions for myself and for my family that we're going to be okay long term? And he said, that's who I am for your parents. That's who I am for other people and the clients I have. Who do you want to be? And I remember I'm like on the other end of this phone call. It's 2017. It was a dark January rainy night. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to be this guy. Like I'm going to drive my car through a wall right now. Like this is awesome. So long story short, that was when I decided, hey, this is the direction I'm going to go. I got the licenses, got the degrees, went through college, came out, I've got my CFP since then. And that pretty much led me into finance.
So Mando, as you were, kind of sorting this out, I think for a lot of people as they're going through that process, right, whether it be in college or high school, what was the thing or two that made you realize that being a doctor wasn't for you, right? I mean, you talked about that it wasn't your passion, and I think a lot of times people struggle. At least I've seen people struggle with that because there's a lot of people out there that say, just go find your passion and that's how you'll be set for life. Well, in reality, your passion might be something that doesn't generate income. and I feel like a lot of times we're guiding our youth kind of incorrectly because we're saying like, oh, just go do what you love. And it's like, well, I mean, there is some element of like, yes, you want to find your passion, but you want to find your passion that also provides the life that you want. And when I think about like my life, there's maybe not a lot of people that are passionate about insurance, right? But at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about, to your point, relationships, helping people, things like that. So just curious, like how did you start to kind of find that, frankly, at a relatively young age? Because I feel like a lot of times people are going through college, finding their majors, getting into their first few jobs, and they feel tired and because it's hard work, but they don't know, is it because it's not my passion or just because it's harder work than I'm used to?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, because the biggest things I can say, Dustin, I could remember going to my biology classes, going to my labs, and being in class with the people I was with, and no shade to any of them, but I just didn't fit in. Like, what, just personally, I didn't find myself gravitating towards anyone. I didn't find myself like really hanging in the places they would hang and doing the things they did. And quite frankly, like, I didn't want to have to study every waking hour of my life to get through it and be successful and actually get to medical school at the end of 4 years. And I knew that's what it was going to take. And when I came to that realization, I really told myself, I don't want to do this. And I know it's not the only path to success. I know there's other successful people and there has to be another way, which kind of led to the conversations I had. So I think there's that aspect to it. And as far as growing up at a young age, if you will, being in college, being self-aware enough to look at some of these things head on and really have a lot of difficult conversations, I attribute a lot of that to football. Football, my whole life, I was always a captain. Like, when I was in high school, I was a captain. When I was in college, they named me as a captain as a sophomore, and I was a 3-year captain. Like, I was always in a leadership type position. And even though it doesn't directly correlate to like real life or anything like that, what that forced me to do in sports was grow up and be kind of different than the people I was around at some level, because I was the intermediary. The coach needed something done. There was a hard decision. Something had to happen. I was the guy that had to deliver the bad news. I had to be the bad guy in a lot of people's stories throughout my athletic career so that everyone else could be in alignment and things could shake how they would. So because of that, it forced me to face a lot of tough decisions that I think primed me to be more willing to face them as I've gotten into my career.
Mando, I think about youth sports, which, as Dustin alluded to, we have a lot of experience in. It's not easy for youngsters to step up and be the leader. I think about it from my time playing sports in high school and beyond, and then I see it now through the lens of my oldest, who's a junior, and it's got to be single-digit % of kids who are what I call natural born leaders. And yeah, I do believe that there are some young individuals who are born that way. And then I also believe that there are some who can become natural born leaders. But what was it in you that, either you said, hey, I want to be a leader, or you said, what are the tools I need to be a leader on this team?
It started with my dad. It was how I was raised. It was how I grew up. It meant something to go play a sport, give hard effort, put hard work in, and, be the one that you're hustling back on defense in a basketball game. Or in football, there's a breakaway touchdown and you're chasing the kid down, whether you might catch him or might not catch him. And in baseball, sliding into home plate to hopefully score a winning run or something like that. Like, it meant something to do those things. And it meant something to be the guy who's going out working out on his own, who's doing drills at the basketball hoop in your driveway as a kid. Like, those things, I think, as I look back, my dad rewarded me for, whether it was intentional or not. Whenever I would take behaviors like that, he would make sure to tell me about it and make sure I knew how important it was. And not just my dad as well. I had my grandfather who's still alive and doing really well. And he was a big person as well that would do that, because he had a background. He coached high school sports, and it meant something to him when, I would work hard, and he knows what it's like to be on the coaching side of things. So I saw this from my dad, from my grandfather, And it made me take these behaviors. And I think naturally, when you go the extra mile, you put the extra effort in, you tend to have success in whatever sport you're doing or whatever thing you're doing. And other people will start to look toward you when stuff hits the fan.
I love that you attribute a lot of that to hustle and hard work, which is kind of like an affirmation for us because we often say that hustle is contagious. But I digress. I think that's a topic we could dive into forever, leadership in sports. But I want to go back to the financial planning stuff. And you'd mentioned when you had this light bulb moment, what was it about this industry where you felt like you wanted to dive in, you felt like you had a future in this business?
When I played football, there was nothing more rewarding than having a great year and being told about it and given an accolade or given an award, or, you win a championship. There was no better feeling than that. Nothing better, from youth sports to high school to college sports, nothing better. In financial advising, in a weird way, I saw this industry as entrepreneurial, which it is. I started my book of business from zero with no clients given to me, and I've built it up now over the last 4.5 years. But I saw that as like, I can get the clients, I can increase my income, I can improve my life and my business and impact other people doing it. And it is directly proportionate to the hard work I had to put in on the football field to make sure that I was all conference at the end of the year and make sure we won the championship at the end of the year. So it was very easy for like my athlete brain to translate how football life was into how financial advisor business, I guess you could say like the business world in general, life is. And that really attracted me to this.
So Mando, one of the things that kind of sticks out to me, I mean, I met a lot of people that are, CFPs and in the space over the years, and just kind of a few things you said together. You clearly embrace being an outlier. I mean, when you look at the personal branding that you've gone out, I mean, there's not a lot of people in your space that are getting out there quite like you are. Can you speak a little bit to, like, as you were getting into this space, that was obviously a conscious decision that you made to kind of be that outlier, be in a space that really nobody else is. Can you just talk about kind of how that started and kind of how you progressed through that?
This is going to be a little bit deep, but because it is. Growing up, I always had an extreme fear of death, like an extreme fear of death. And what that's translated to as I've gotten older, me personally, I'm a man of faith. Like, I believe in God. Whatever everyone believes in is fine, but that's what I do personally, and I'm very in tune with my faith. But even so, I feared death. And as I got into my career, my relationship with that has changed to where I'm okay with it. I understand we all die, but what I'm really afraid of more than anything is living the same life as 7 billion other people on planet Earth. And that's what I looked at, and I'm like, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of that. I don't want to live the same life as 7 billion other people. So that thinking, that statement really drives most of the behaviors I take. When I got into this as a 22-year-old, almost 5 years ago, I started and I went to my parents and I said, I will not fail at being an advisor because of effort and things I can control. I have a network. You also have networks, mom and dad. Who can I call? Like, it's cliche for a lot of people that start in business and anything where you need to solicit people. But I did that. And I called every single person. They said, you can reach out to this person and use my name. And I did. And that's how I started my business. That runs out though. Like, if it runs out, that only goes so far. I had a good start and I built up a good base, but like, it's not going to keep the lights on. Let's be real. So when I was in college, I actually was doing sneaker reselling on Instagram and Facebook Marketplace. And I built an account to about 10,000 followers in 5 months. I also was selling over 100 pairs a month at my peak. I was probably profiting 3,000 a month if I really estimated it and looked back. But I was doing 20,000 a month in transaction volume. Sneakers are smaller margin business, but a lot of transactions, a lot of business experience. Like, it was a real business that I had to learn. Fast forward and bringing this all together, when I ran out of mom and dad's contacts and I ran out of my contacts and I didn't know who to call, I figured, why don't I just do it what I did with that sneaker thing and financial advice? And hey, LinkedIn's probably a better place to do this than Instagram was with sneakers. So let's take a crack at LinkedIn. And this led to different coaches I've worked with over the years. You know, you guys know Nat. Nat was one of the people that helped me. I have a few other people I've worked with. And one day you learn another thing and stack it and stack it and stack it. And here we are.
So, Mondo, I want to dive into that specifically because there are a few industries where, you know, you could do whatever you want and you're a dime a dozen. Ultimately, you're a commodity. And your industry is probably one where, you know, you could drive down the road, you could run into a chiropractor, a bank, a financial advisor. So, how have you gone about differentiating yourself so that you don't fall into that? Because I think a lot of people see most, not all, but most financial advisors as they all kind of do the same thing. And I know that you're necessarily not that. You've done a really good job of doing what a lot of them aren't, which is building a personal brand on social media, specifically LinkedIn. But how are you going about differentiating yourself in a what is essentially a sea of sameness?
So I look back to my first year in business where I exhausted my family's connections and network, and I had a great year. And because of that great year, I was rewarded with a trip that was to Rome, Italy. And I went on that trip with my now wife, then girlfriend. And we go on that trip, and I'm at a dinner on the last night in Rome at the insane Waldorf Astoria hotel there. And I could remember thinking to myself, is this it? Like, is this like the pinnacle of everything that I worked some 80-hour weeks more often than not for? And sure, I'm 22 years old and tasting success some people never get in their lives. But is this like really all I have to look forward to every year, even if I repeat what I just did? So because of that, the next year, I totally revamped my business. I'm like, I am not running that race again. I'm not going on that hamster wheel. I'm going to enjoy my life. And that vacation that I took, like that was the only one I took all year. And I probably wouldn't have even taken one if it wasn't on my schedule because work put it there. So I really had to reevaluate. Like I burned out, man. And in that reevaluation, I realized that I need to work. I need to work to live and not the other way around. I need to go on the quarterly trip with Mattia and go places. I need to make sure I make time outside of work. So it made me reevaluate not only how I was running my business, but running my life. And to answer your question directly now, Chris, what I think differentiates me, and this is inherently from that story, I believe so strongly in helping my clients maximize their life today and what they're doing this year and next year and the things they do with their family, all the way down to the trips they take and how could we save a couple $1,000s with credit card rewards or whatever other perks are available out there. I believe so strongly in that, as well as the long-term retirement security and whatever other conversations come into play. So molding those two things together, that's where I differentiate myself. And why I'm so strong-minded about that, it's hard to do because you need to be super proactive to do that. You need to be talking to your clients a lot. You need to be meeting with them a lot. And that's exactly the service I bring to my clients. And I'm not the cheapest out there, but I never wanted to be the cheapest. I want to give the most value. That's where I think I differentiate from a lot of the advisors out there.
Relationship based, which I think is so important in sales. It's so important in life. I heard, I think it was a podcast say, the more relationships you have, the more sales you have. And not only that, but you can have a relationship, but it's really important to cultivate and sustain that relationship because what I've seen in my experience in sales is that you can have that relationship, but the more you take care of that person, the more you serve them, the more that they're going to reciprocate. It's going to pay dividends because those individuals say, wow, you know, Mando, Chris, whoever, they took care of me so much that they want to now be a source of referrals for you. And I think that some people overlook it. They get, like you said, stuck in the hamster wheel. They get burnt out. They're trying to do too many things that they're not focusing on their relationships. And I'm wondering if that's where you think a lot of financial advisors go wrong in your space.
Absolutely. And not for just their fault entirely. A lot of companies will have quotas behind, hey, you need to bring in this much assets, or you need to sell this much insurance products, or a combination of both sometimes. So that can put pressure on advisors who aren't building a good enough pipeline that they don't need to pressure clients to do things. And that's where a lot of advisors get a bad rap, because I don't have a good enough pipeline. So now the people in my pipeline, I need to capitalize on that much more. And because of that, I end up pushing things that I shouldn't be pushing. Not entirely their fault. I don't believe that most companies give the marketing and sales, really the marketing, because there's sales training everywhere, I think, even in this industry. But I don't think that there's enough marketing training. And the marketing training there is, I don't think is good. And that's what really caused me to go out and hire coaches and pay money and put real money into my personal development to learn marketing, so that I never had to pressure anyone to do anything that they shouldn't do.
I think that's, it's interesting just to hear how you talk about it. And I think a lot of times people skip through that when they're trying to achieve their own goals. What a lot of people forget is the easiest way to achieve your own goals is help other people achieve theirs. And if you have that lens each and every day, to your point, you're doing things that are outside the traditional sense of what you're doing, because, but that's because it's ultimately just helping them achieve their goals, right? I think even just the thing you said about short-term versus long-term. Well, why do you say that? You say that because most people in your space, it's like, well, don't do anything right now. Like, don't live your life right now, put everything away. And then 25 years from now, that's when you can live your life. and which is insane, of course, right? And that's, nobody wants that. But I to your point, I feel like so many people get lost in that. A lot of people have asked me, like, will you ever retire? I'm like, I hope not. I hope not. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, well, because I love what I get to do every day. I love getting up every day. And if I didn't have that, I think I'd just be bored, right? Like, it's not, and so no, I hope I never retire. I hope I die in the job. And it doesn't mean because I don't have anything else out of work. It's just, it's because it's part of my day. It's part of who I am. It's part of the value I create for myself and for others. Right. So I think that's really, it's great to see just even how quickly you saw that. And I think for so many people out there, that's where they miss. And I mean, I'll use myself as an example. There's been points in my career where you see that, right? Because to your point, you have those short-term goals and you're so laser focused on them. And it's almost, it's not that you're not working harder, but you're almost working so hard and so focused on your own personal gain that you end up actually losing the bigger picture, versus if instead you can just take a step back. You still got to work hard. You still got to crank it. You still got to do things that people aren't willing to do. But when you have it on a lens of, what, I'm just going to pour in other people. I'm going to help other people achieve their goals. It just comes back in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. Total agreement.
So what's next, right? So, I mean, have you seen, you're carving out a really unique brand. You're getting outside of kind of the sea of sameness, as Chris talked about. So what's next? How do you continue to kind of dial that forward?
For me, it's growing my team out with who I have under me and working for me, and just the vision I have there to really just continue as I grow, because as my brand grows and as my speaking opportunities grow, like next year, I already have 2 keynotes booked for next year, where I've literally done 1 keynote to this point, other than a bunch of podcasts I've been on, but we know a keynote's a different environment, right? And I imagine there's going to be even more than just those 2 next year. So as that grows, the speaking thing, maybe starting a podcast next year, that's on my radar as well. But growing the brand out and ensuring that my clients are still getting what they need to get, that's the line that I need to walk with those things, as well as, like, back to the point, still continuing to travel, enjoy my life how I like to, and dance that dance where everything is cohesive. So more of the same, just kind of amplifying it, man.
Love that.
Mondo, I can tell based on the book on your shelf back there, Buy Back Your Time, and some of the things that you've mentioned already that over the last few years, you've become really big on efficiency, which is, Dustin and I talk a lot about that. It's really one of the keys to unlocking the next level of success in whatever level you're on, for sure. But as you look at that next level you just talked about, what are some of the tactics and what are some of the things you're going to be doing to ensure that you can sustain that growth? Because we all want it. We all want to be to that next level, or sometimes even if you do have the vision, you see it, but a lot of people just don't know what are the behaviors and tactics I need to unlock that next level to maybe get to the level beyond that.
It starts with identifying everything that you do versus how much energy does it bring you and how much money does it bring you, and creating a scale on that. So I got that from the book, Buy Back Your Time. Like there's an exercise literally called the time and energy audit. And you do that and understand like what those activities are, what's most valuable, what's essential that you do. And that's where it comes down to what I'm looking to delegate. So I can look at my first year as an advisor where I had to run the initial calls. I had to run the data collection calls. I had to run the data verification. I had to give the recommendations. I had to make sure they were implemented. Oh, by the way, I had to do all the software stuff and the deliverable creation behind the scenes and the paperwork when accounts needed to be open. Like I was and marketing and prospecting. Like I was everybody. I wore every hat. And I think that's a lot of business owners when you first start in every business. So at that point, I said, okay, well, what's the first thing I got to get off my plate? Well, that's paperwork. I can't be doing applications. There's no reason I need to do that, and it doesn't affect my clients whatsoever. So what I'm looking to delegate as I move forward and as more success comes, it's going to be what are the things that are essential, yes, but they don't necessarily need Mando doing them. Like it doesn't affect the client experience if I'm not doing them. And that's where I'm starting. I think from there, and I'm not at this level yet, but I think in the future it becomes how do I recreate myself in other advisors that can give the clients a client experience that I give or similar to it in their own way and give the results that I've given my clients. So I think it goes on that progression in so little words. And, of course it gets more micro, but that's generally the frame I think through.
Yeah, so if you zoom out 5 years from now, what is maybe even 10 years from now, depends on what your runway looks like. What does success look like for Mando?
Man, success looks like that I'm waking up and I know that me and my wife are going on a trip every couple months, and hopefully by then we don't have kids now. Hopefully by then have some kids running around because that's something we both want for our lives. And the professional stuff, man, like I think that's the easy part. Honestly, it's going to look like me hiring an associate. It's going to look like me having a portfolio manager in house, an insurance expert, another CFP who can do preliminary recommendations, and I can sign off on things. I'll become more of like a CEO than a direct client facing person, except with my legacy type clients. You know what I mean? That's where I see the business going. But I think that's the easy stuff. Like I think the personal life, that's the hard stuff to master. And I want all the professional success. I want all the monetary success. I want all the vanity that growing a brand brings. But I know at the end of the day, like you could drop $100 million in my bank account right now. I might wake up and there might be marble floors instead of laminate floors downstairs, but I'm still going to go over to my Nespresso machine, make a coffee, and take it and sit on my couch, whether it's a $2,000 couch or a $20,000 couch with maybe a bigger TV in front of me.
Right. I think it's interesting you say that. We Chris and I, when we talk about hustle, a lot of times we talk about the fact that hustle and burnout a lot of times are equivalent to people in their mind. And the reason being is because if you're putting in all that effort without a vision of who you want to be, not just in work, but in all your domains of life, it actually just speeds towards burnout. And, as we've built out, we refer to it as our 2020 vision guide, which basically kind of walks people through how to get really clear on your future vision of your life. Because, as you talk about, right, I mean, you just kind of skip over it. But I wonder how many people are as intentional about their personal life that says, I'm going to take a quarterly trip with my wife. Right. And actually, my wife and I have a very kind of similar mindset, right? Like we know that if it's too long before we've just gotten out of Dodge, even for a couple of days, it just kind of wears it. We just always need that to kind of look forward to. But I think that's one of, I think the biggest things is people are not thinking about all their different domains. And a lot of people refer to it as like, quote unquote, work-life balance, which I hate that term. I think that's a BS term because no one has ever asked to work more. It's just, and really the whole theme of work-life balance has nothing to do with balance. It has everything to do with you don't have a vision of what your future is. And so you're burning out. And so you think that that's somehow going to make it work. But if you just had more balance, but you were still miserable and not achieving your goals and not kind of getting closer to your future vision, that's still not going to solve it. You're just, in some ways you see like a lot of people, they get that quote unquote balance and they actually start to get further depressed because perhaps the work thing was actually something that was giving them some sort of positive vibes back. And now they're spread to all these things. So, I think it's really interesting when you talk about kind of where you're going and your vision. I think a lot of times that's what people lose is they're not thinking about what's next. They're not taking that time to think about what are all the domains that I really want to be successful in and what does that mean to me? Because it is different for everyone.
Yeah. And I will say this one more thing on it. Like, that's what I'm so passionate about, Dustin, because most people don't live that way. Like most people truly, and in some cases, you do have to increase your income. So I want to be like empathize with those people. But like, even I've seen people that make multiple six figures that can do this and they don't live this way. They don't take the trips with their family. They don't make time for those things. It doesn't happen. And I believe so strongly, like I am so passionate about it. You can hear it in my voice right now. Like I want more people to live this way because I truly think it's the way we should live life. We will die one day. Everyone will be gone. We will be a speck of dust. And that really drives me to live this way now and maximize the time I have here, do the things I want to do responsibly. Of course, you shouldn't just go, on a $50,000 vacation if you can't afford it. But do that, train people to do it, build out my team, let that, flourish from there because I only have so much impact as one man. But if I could teach multiple people, that brings more impact to more people to help realize that. And it's just what lights me up, man. It lights me up.
Love it. So what's the one thing you see as you're talking to people that's getting in their way of doing that?
I think that we are conditioned so much on what traditional retirement is of like, I need to put X amount of dollars away. People don't do it in their 20s. Now, you're in your early 30s. Maybe you waited again. And now you're 35, 36, 37, 38. And you're like, I'm behind. And now you still don't do something. So into your 40s, you're behind. And now into your 50s, you're even more behind. And we just live in this behind mentality that we never do anything. But the problem is we never even defined what the pace was. We just go off of what an arbitrary, like, max out your 401k. So if you're not doing that, you're automatically behind. Like, this is what people think. So what happens is, I think through intentional planning, through strategic planning, through proactive planning, I come in with my clients and I show them what enough is. I'm like, let's just figure out what enough is. I don't know if you're behind. I don't know if you're ahead. Let's find out what the pace we need to be on is. Then we can make decisions on that. And we could take all the other factors like your kids getting out of the house when you're older and your income increasing. We could take these things into account so that we don't necessarily need to be on the pace today, but we can have the pace built in.
Yeah. So Mondo, if we zoom out, because you're wise beyond your years, you, unlike a lot of folks who take decades to learn some of these life lessons, what is one lesson you wish you would have learned sooner?
That I don't need to know everything. And I do very much so know that now, but I can look at when I started my career and look, I don't take for granted where I'm at in life and I'm super grateful, super blessed, super happy for what I've achieved and what I'll continue to do. But I can look at Mando on day one of his career and I'm like, dude, if you dropped your ego sooner and you didn't get in your own way and you stopped acting like you know everything, or thinking you need to, you'd be even further now. So with that, like I thought that I had to impress people. I thought I had to have it all together. I thought I needed to be the guy that knows everything. I'll tell you guys right now, in the past week, I've probably told my clients, I don't know, let me get back to you and talk to someone more than I've told in the first 3 months of my career.
Mhm.
So if I had to distill it down to one thing, it would be that. And, I think it was it's one of my strengths when I transitioned from football into this, because I equate that to, like, there's a problem and I need to solve the problem, and I'm going to solve the problem and not go to any lengths to not solve it. But I used to think that I had to be the guy doing it myself, and now I realize I can get help solve the problem and still give the impact.
I love that. Mondo, I think about this conversation and, I zoom out and try to recap what we talked about. It seems like your journey to becoming a better financial advisor is not through becoming a better financial advisor, it's through you and being a better you, being efficient, being more productive. And that's something that I think that a lot of people overlook. I know I have in my career where, focus on marketing, you eat it, you live it, you dream it, you think it, you walk it. It's like everything you do is this. But a lot of the times, as Dustin alluded to this before, it's sometimes that's not the right path. The right path is building efficiencies, building productivity, SOPs. And that's, I think, a message that if you're listening to this episode, you should underscore, because it doesn't necessarily mean you need to work 60 hours a week. It's working on becoming and building a better you for tomorrow. And love that, Mondo's. Great episode. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time. Before we let you go, can you tell our audience where they can find you and anything else you've got going on?
Yeah, LinkedIn will be the best place. I'm most active there. I put out content every day at 8 a.m. Eastern. And I also have a newsletter. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, right on my profile, there'll be a button, view my newsletter. You can subscribe to it there. That's 3 times a week at this point, hopefully ramping that up to daily as well as time goes on. But daily content on LinkedIn, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the newsletter. Best place to find me.
And what's interesting about your content is that very little of it revolves around finances, investing. It's thought-provoking, it's interesting, it's about life, and it's the type of stuff that is adding value to your newsfeed. So, Mondo, thank you so much for being here. To all the listeners, thanks again for tuning in to another episode. If you haven't already, do us a huge favor, leave us a review. It only takes a couple of seconds, but it leaves a massive impact. We'll see you next time. Peace.